academia has become an ivory tower where knowledge and access to knowledge is only available to the privileged few, and how also the institutions are able to control what information is being taught and what information is available and accessible to the masses. Welcome back, Burnout Teachers. Today's lesson will be about academia and the ivory tower. I would just like to share my own experience being in a PhD program and how I felt that a lot of the things that I experienced were contrary to a true practice of education. I was eventually weaned out of the program that I was in at Trinity College of Dublin in Ireland. I was almost being coined as like not being academic enough just because I was choosing to use certain language to talk about my research so that it could be more accessible to people. It wasn't that I wasn't able to use that academic jargon, it was that I was making a choice not to. Don't we want people to understand what we're researching about? I mean, isn't that the point of doing research, is so that people in the society are more knowledgeable about it, and so they can thus make changes within their daily life and take action based on the research. But yet it seems like higher institutions and higher education has been constructed for a very different purpose, and that the purpose is rather we're going to decide and pick and choose the things that we want to research on. We're going to push them out to serve a certain political agenda, and we're only going to represent those communities which we have an invested interest in representing. Because I really wanted it to be that anybody could pick up my dissertation and be able to read it, and I think this is part of the problem. Why should the research that academics are doing be limited to academics? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And that doesn't, as an educator and as a teacher, really reinforce this whole concept of creating lifelong learners and making our communities people who are invested and interested in education. And instead, it creates a hierarchy and makes education about certain people having the status of being a doctorate and having this knowledge that no one else can understand because it's so complicated, and then others just being these idiots who don't really understand anything, when in reality the knowledge is so easily digestible if it were just portrayed in a way that people could understand it. Teaching, what is teaching? Teaching is making an idea that may seem initially difficult and challenging and breaking it down into different concepts and making it more digestible for your students so that they can take each thing at one step at a time until they've digested it and needing time to work with it and to understand the material. And so to me, being a good teacher is being able to explain what it is that you're trying to teach to people in a very simple way. In my opinion, the way that we really are able to create a more educated community and for the masses to be more educated and for them to be invested in learning, it is through making knowledge accessible and not making it about this capitalist framework where it's about who can make the most money because they got a higher degree or who is able to read it because of their education level. It's more about making knowledge easier to understand through making videos, through visuals, through catering to different types of learning styles. And I just feel like writing in this jargon, of course there's jargon in every field, but I think we need to start really thinking about how to make really important research that's being done accessible to all people. If we're exposing kids from a young age to a system of education that is very inclusive, that is representative of all people, that uses certain language that is not only favoring certain people of a certain class or of a certain background, but is really inclusive to all people and representative of all students, then I think that will give them the tools so that when they do get into the higher education space, where I think is kind of the height of the discrimination, of the exclusion, of the hierarchy of knowledge, of status being a determinant of whether people can get an education or not. I think if they've had that exposure early on, then their willingness to be able to challenge some of these systems of domination is higher. Knowledge should be exciting. It shouldn't always be presented in such a strict and rigid way that only appeals to a certain small fragment of the population. And so I really urge everyone, please make your classrooms that space for your students so they can learn it, and so that when they do go to these educational institutions, hopefully they can be the champions to change these systems of domination there, and to really make universities and higher education a space that is accessible for all.